Brought to you from Melbourne, Australia. This is the Badminton Podcast, a community for badminton players by badminton players, where we talk badminton, celebrate local heroes, interview players from all walks of life, and push you to grow as a player and a person. Introducing your hosts, Jeff and Henry.
Hey badminton community, welcome to another episode of the Badminton Podcast. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Henry.
We're the co-founders of Volant, the brand that gives the world the most versatile badminton apparel and the brand that brings the badminton community together so that we can share the love for our sport with each other and the world. So check us out on www.volantwear.com and on our social media. Our handle is Volantwear, VOLANTWEAR. Today's podcast is about something that's a current event, and it relates to the fact that everyone is staying at home at the moment with COVID-19 surrounding the world. And we're just getting an insight from a player who's been on this podcast before as to what the ramifications are and how it actually feels and what's actually changed in their lives just because of the delay of the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. And I'm really excited to welcome onto the podcast again, Gronya Somerville. Now, for those who don't know Gronya is an Australian doubles player, both women's doubles and mixed doubles, and she's the number one in Australia, and she is on the road to qualifying for the Tokyo originally 2020 Olympics in both events. And at the moment we are in a bit of a lockdown here in Melbourne, Australia, and in Australia in general, so we're just here to chat to her. So Gronya, thanks a lot for being on another episode of the podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So Gronya, let's just get started and get right into it, because I think the question on everyone's mind is, how did you feel? How did you feel about what actually happened with the delay of the Olympic Games, and how are you processing it? How are you doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big kind of shock to everyone involved. Nobody could have seen this coming. Apparently Bill Gates did, but anyway. It's really turned a lot of athletes' worlds upside down with all the impact it's had on training and access to gyms and that kind of thing. And then, I think athletes at this stage are probably just pretty happy that the Olympics is still going ahead after, some of the rumors that it could be cancelled, and just trying to make the best of the situation that they're in.
So I know that you plan to play quite a few tournaments around the world, especially Europe and then Australia, closing into the end of April. How has the change in the tournaments affected your planning?
Yeah, so we had about 6 tournaments planned in Europe and Asia, and that would kind of be leading right up till the end of the qualification period. Just one by one, those started to get cancelled, and then BWF just went and cancelled the rest of the tournaments till middle of April, leading up pretty much to the end of the qualification. And then from there, everything onwards has also been cancelled. So, there wasn't much we could really do. We knew that everybody else was in the same boat, so it wasn't like some players were getting points and some wasn't really, aside from All England, which went ahead. From now on, we're just all trying to maintain our physical fitness as much as we can without having access to courts and gyms at the moment.
So Gronya, what does that involve now with COVID-19? We know from looking at your Instagram, you're doing quite a number of, exercise posts. So what's involved with staying fit when there's sort of nothing to look forward to just yet?
So luckily I was able to get my hands on quite a lot of gym equipment from my old sports school, and also a bit from Badminton Australia as well. So I've got a pretty neat gym setup, which I'm super grateful for. So I've been trying to do a bike session each day. I've started doing some footwork sessions and like heavy racket kind of stuff, and then also strength sessions. So I'm trying to keep up pretty much at least 2 to 3 hours of physical training each day, trying to replicate what I was doing before slightly. And then just making the most of this kind of downtime, like spending time with my family, doing some of the stuff that I was kind of looking forward to being able to do after the Olympics. And it's nice to be able to fit it in now. For example, I wanted to start doing like more outdoor jogs and that kind of thing, but I couldn't really do it too much before the Olympics because I was scared I would get injuries and couldn't manage it with all the training I was doing. But now I have time to do that, which is really nice. And then also I've been able to fit in one of my uni subjects, which I was holding off for till after the Olympics.
Yeah, cool, Gronya. So with all of the posts that you've been doing on social media, in your stories, Instagram mainly, I believe, have you had many people kind of follow on with you and do the exercises and report back to you, or any feedback from that point of view?
Yeah, so far the feedback's pretty good. There's quite a few people that have tried them and giving positive feedback saying it's helping them and they appreciate the information. So it's pretty nice to feel like I'm having a bit of impact and having the time to record these and then go back and edit them and respond to people's comments is better than before when I would just post something short and quick because that's all I had time for.
Yeah, and I did see your setup on your post. It's a pretty neat setup. Are you just going to try to keep the stuff there?
Oh, yeah. No, it's awesome. I probably, wouldn't need to go to the gym anymore if I had this all the time, but no, it can't really, stay this way because most of it is from my old high school, so when they're back up and running, they'll need that kind of stuff back, so, yeah, unfortunately not a long-term home gym situation.
It's pretty nice of them to share that equipment with you, though.
Yeah, it was super generous. There's quite a few high performance athletes that came out of my high school. So obviously they wanted to give it to kind of the high priority ones initially. And luckily, because I'm trying to qualify for the Olympics, I was one of them. And they kind of gave me free reign with whatever I needed. So yeah, that was really good. I mean, it's definitely kind of made me see how great it is to have it at home. So I think a lot of people after this will invest in their own home equipment a lot more and get a good setup.
Yeah, Gronya, I was actually speaking to my chiropractor this morning, actually, because I got some treatment this morning, and he was saying that there was a lot of the gym suppliers, because there's a gym at where he works as well, that they're really running out of stuff because people are starting to hoard gym gear and really start building their home gyms.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good thing. I mean, I've seen the parks and the tracks and that kind of thing so much busier lately. I think it's a lot of people are starting to invest in their health a bit more with some of the free time that I have. And yeah, I think some gyms have even started hiring out equipment, so which is a nice way for them to keep some of their income, I guess, considering they won't have members attending much anymore.
Yeah, so Gronya, you said that with COVID-19, it has disrupted your training schedule and your tournament schedule because there's no tournaments to play. But you've kind of gone through the positive things. So you've been able to stay home more, get your workouts done still, work on your physical training, which is going out there, going for runs and doing that really hard physical stuff and not being too concerned because there's no on-court stuff to make you overwork or overtrain. And you can really start focusing back on that base fitness of your strength and then, of course, your core cardiovascular fitness as well. And they're all positives that are coming out of it. So more time with the family, a bit more flexibility in that kind of way. But in terms of the on-court and actually hitting, how do you feel about the current state of not being able to be on court hitting shuttles? Is that something that is actually a bit refreshing for you? It's a bit of a break and it's a bit nice, or you're missing it, or you're wishing you could get on, or all of the above?
Yeah, well, the first that I heard of indoor sports centres and gyms being closed, I freaked out a little bit because when all these tournaments started to get cancelled, I was like, oh, it's not too bad. We've been traveling so much. I'm pretty tired from traveling. It'd be good to kind of get some decent training in, work on all the stuff that I haven't had a chance to with all these tournaments and travel. So I was pretty looking forward to that. And then when they said no more sports centres open, I was like, oh, damn, that was kind of what I was counting on. So I was a little bit shattered for a day or two there. But yeah, now I just have to try and do what I can. So I did a racket work session today with heavy racket and some footwork and that kind of thing. But yeah, definitely love to be out there back on the court. Yeah, I mean, it's just fun and it's just what I love to do. So yeah, I'm definitely missing it.
Yeah, I guess, how do you feel about having to wait a year now?
For the Olympics, do you mean?
Yeah, for the Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, a lot can still change in a year, so I'm still a bit worried. We were pretty close to qualifying and, getting the go ahead to be part of the Olympics and everything. So I was still a little bit scared about how it could all turn out. But in terms of our badminton, I guess kind of the longer we have to prepare for us, the better. I mean, we're always improving a lot, and the more time we have to prepare, I think the closer we can get to some of the top players. So in that respect, I think it could be an advantage. But yeah, like I said, a lot can still change in a year, so there's still a lot of unknowns, and that's a little bit scary.
Yeah, I guess for you, Gronya, with that flexibility you have, it is good that you've got some time to actually work on your fitness and yeah, just have hopefully a period of injury-free time while you're actually training itself. Do you know of any other athletes that perhaps, I know that you said that you've taken on another subject at university and you had a 3-hour lecture today that we spoke about before we actually started recording this podcast. But in terms of other athletes, have you heard of any other athletes that have really struggled to accept the fact that they have to wait another year? So it might have been a huge disruption to them because maybe they were thinking of starting university or studying next year or starting a job next year or starting a family next year, etc. Have you heard of any other athletes where this has really kind of rocked their world?
I follow quite a few athletes on social media. I haven't I don't know them directly, but I've seen quite a few kind of runners and those kind of people. They seem to have taken it quite hard, maybe because they plan like their peak phases a lot more specifically around events and that kind of thing. Or, I mean, maybe it's just a whole personality thing about change or something like that. But I could imagine some athletes that can't even train at all properly due to the restrictions of like where you could go, like maybe swimmers, like even our beaches are getting closed now, like public swimming pools are closed. If you didn't have like your own personal pool in your backyard, I mean, I imagine it'd be pretty hard to do anything related really to that. Yeah, I don't know. I think everyone's taking it differently.
So I guess the big question on everyone's mind and my mind as well is how the BWF will manage it or how you think qualification's actually going to go because initially, of course, the qualification period was up to the 30th of April 2020 and players have traveled overseas and they've played heaps of tournaments, spent so much money, time and efforts, blood, sweat and tears trying to qualify within that period. In terms of the qualification, even though the games have been pushed a year later, do you know of anything that's happening with the qualifying points and the tournaments included?
So as far as I know, just in general for athletes, I mean, everyone who is outright qualified will still be qualified. As for badminton, none of us have been officially like qualified for the Olympics, as the period hadn't finished until the end of April. So as far as I would guess, it would be that everything so far would count towards your Olympic qualification, and if anything, they would probably add more tournaments, but I'm sure they'd definitely try and complete the tournaments that they missed kind of from mid-March to the end of April. Yeah, they might, like if, the world's up and running again by the start of January next year or something, then I could imagine they would add more tournaments or something like that. And it would still just be your top 10 best average.
So do you think that they'll only add on the tournaments that were missed and then you just have to play tournaments for the sake of playing tournaments and it's not really going to count towards the Olympics? And if that's the case, do you think that the draws are going to, because I guess if they add the tournaments in and then that's the cutoff periods for the Olympics, do you think the tournaments from there in the lead up to the actual Olympic Games are going to be a little bit empty purely because all the people who are trying to qualify and didn't get in won't play anymore?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the case anyway with how the qualification period works. So if it finishes in April, then between April and the Olympics in July, the tournaments might have less activity. But I think up until like mid-June or so, your new world ranking points still count for seeding. So in that respect, some players still try and play a lot of tournaments to get, if they're like in a position to get a good seed for the Olympics. But yeah, usually the smaller tournaments like challenges or 100s, they'll be a lot weaker, and a lot of kind of maybe lower level players who have been holding off playing some tournaments because they are so strong during the Olympic qualification period, then they'll come out and start playing a lot more from that period as well.
Yeah, I guess it really depends on when they can actually play the tournaments that they've missed, doesn't it? Because I guess if they can't play them until, I don't know how long this COVID-19 issue is going to go on for, but if they can't play it till, say, later in the year or early next year, that's just completely guessing. And I guess the timing's not really that different. But I guess if they can play it early and they played in, I don't know, let's say August 2020, then all of a sudden there's a lot more months between that and the games than there would have been between the 30th of April and the Olympics this year.
Yeah, that would be the case. I think I think if anything, they'd probably just add more qualification tournaments, but then it would still count towards your points and your average, because there wouldn't be much point in adding tournaments that wouldn't count towards that, because people wouldn't have a reason to play them as much unless they finish the qualification period earlier than April, and then athletes would have longer to prepare for the Olympics, that kind of thing. Who knows?
Well, I suppose some athletes will probably start trying to play some of the tournaments leading up to the Olympics if they haven't been playing for some time as well, not just because of ranking points. I suppose if, for example, they had outright gotten into the Olympics qualifying, but they haven't been playing competitively for a period of time just because of COVID, I suspect that there's going to be an element of players actually getting back into that competitive routine. And for you, Gronya, like when this all blows over, when COVID does blow over, and you do get into Olympic qualifications, are you going to try and enter as many tournaments as you can before the Olympics just to get that competitive, I guess, consistency back?
I mean, we really haven't planned kind of anything much ahead because the situation's so unstable, but for sure we'd want to get out there and play some more tournaments, especially as my partner's interstate, and we like tournaments in the main time when we have to train together and play together. So yeah, we definitely probably play a little bit more than we might be needed to, just to get that experience and the feeling back on court together.
Yeah, I guess it's really hard to plan because you don't even know when the tournaments are going to be, so you can't really organize your training schedule around that. You've just got to guess and then keep training, and hopefully it just arrives at the right time for you.
Yeah, exactly. All we can do right now is just stay in the best shape possible, and yeah, just be ready to go when the time comes.
So, Gronya, now that you've had a bit of downtime and been able to explore many different things outside of badminton because of what's happening around the world, has there been any changes to the perspective that you have on what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of people kind of through this are having, a bit of some epiphanies and that kind of thing related to how the world works and that kind of thing. So for me, it's really highlighted that you don't need to kind of travel all the time, and you can do a lot of stuff just like where you are, and that impact that it also has on the environment and that kind of thing, and how, yeah, just how society kind of has changed so majorly because of this. Um, so it kind of makes me rethink traveling so much for all these flights and everything, and the cost that comes with that. And then in terms of like how different people are perceiving it, and a lot of people being, angry or frustrated or that kind of thing, it kind of, to me, it just makes me appreciate like my family a lot more, and the things that we do have, and the privileges that we have during this time as opposed to other countries in regards to, healthcare and, a bigger home than other people and all those kind of things.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Grania, because I probably wouldn't say I've learnt, yeah, maybe learnt, but just realized kind of how everything is so interconnected. Like I always knew that things were reliant upon each other, but then you throw this like the COVID virus in, and all of a sudden everything shuts down. So because of one thing, it's a cascading amount of events that happen. So people aren't out, so people don't spend money, and then the economy goes down, the share prices go down, and the whole economy works around people, right?
Yeah,
And when we
exactly.
actually get some sort of barrier between the communication and the interaction of people to people, it just breaks down. I wouldn't say breaks down, but a lot of things get disrupted by it. And for me, it's been really something that I'm thinking, well, something like this, which yes, it's a huge deal, and yes, it's a health thing, but it's just affecting everything and everyone in so many different ways that you wouldn't think one single thing would do. Does that make sense at all to you?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's like the Mother Nature has gone, go to your room and have a think about what you've done.
What have you done to our
And
planet?
yeah, what have you done to the planet? When everyone goes indoors, it's like, oh, okay, greenhouse gas emissions have gone down. Like things are actually, yeah, in a sense, it's doing good for the world that we're all indoors, and not driving around in our cars, releasing toxic fumes into the ozone. There's so many things that come into play, and it's quite interesting to see how the world is responding to something like this as well, and all the, like you said, Jeff, the interconnections between so many different things, so many different networks. Just because the people aspect has been basically diminished or restricted from driving all these businesses and just everyday life as we knew it. But yeah, it's quite a fascinating time, and it's really one of those once in a lifetime things, I think, and I'm hoping that another COVID replica doesn't appear out of nowhere, or a similar disease that shocks the world like this. But yeah, it's an incredibly interesting time period, and certainly makes me personally think about how important your family is, and just it's a bit of a reminder. Is that what it's like for you guys as well?
Yeah. I mean, I never even would have imagined a world where people weren't flying everywhere between countries, and people aren't really outdoors all the time and living these like crazy busy lives, going everywhere all the time, just to what it is now. And it just makes you really see a whole different side to the world, kind of.
Yeah, for me, it definitely has been. I saw my parents. I've seen my parents a couple of times since this whole thing, but it's been so weird because we're very much like a hug kind of family, where we hug each other when we see each other, we hug each other when we say goodbye, etc. And it's been so strange because I've been telling them to stay away. So whenever they get close, I'd say, Dad, move back, because I don't want to be close to them. And that's, yeah, it is a little bit scary to think, especially at my age, parents being about that age where they're at higher risk. And so that definitely has brought back kind of that appreciation for what you have already. And yeah, it's just very grounding. And another thing, Henry, when we talked about interpersonal relationships, it reminds me of the book, The Courage to Be Disliked, because that talks a lot about all problems and all things being related to interpersonal relationships. So bit of a plug for that book. We're not getting any royalties from it, but it's a pretty good book. And Henry, you recommended it to me.
I did. It was a very, very interesting book. So for the audience out there that might be interested in a story basically between, I think it was a philosopher and a very upset human being from memory. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. A young human being.
Is that something that you've read, Gronya?
No, I don't believe so. I think you've recommended it to me before, Jeff.
Chain recommendations.
Do you have it? Can I borrow it?
I do. I can lend it to you as long as we're 1.5 meters away from each other.
As long as you disinfect it.
Yeah, as long as you disinfect it. Yeah.
Throw it from your house.
I'll sanitize it.
So Gronya, moving forwards now, what opportunities do you think it's put in front of you? So you've taken on another subject, university. How do you see that going for you? What are your aspirations, university and academically?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely kind of makes you question your future as an athlete, I guess, in a world where sport might not be necessary, kind of thing. So it has been good to, I enrolled in this subject, pathophysiology, the day before the course started. So I had my first lecture today for 3 hours online through Zoom. And that was pretty cool. And it's nice to be back in the routine of study. I always enjoyed it when I did have uni as a contrast to all the training that I do. And yeah, with that, I just kind of want to finish the course as soon as possible so that I have the piece of paper. And then, I'm not really too sure what I want to do with the course, whether I want to do some sort of business things with it or study further and do a master's, that kind of thing. But I would love to interconnect it with badminton in some way as well, I think.
So Gronya, now that we've got a little bit more time on our hands, we can't go out too much. You're doing your workouts as much as you need to, but you're not being able to be on court. You've taken on this new subject at university, but is there anything else that you plan to learn or get done during this period of COVID?
I always try and make the most of the time that I do have. So I guess the first thing I've tried to do is increase my social media content, and that's done with the workout video I'm posting each day. So I have to record that video. I tried to do it kind of one day in advance, so I had time to edit it because that takes a little bit of time. And then some other things I'm trying to learn. I want to improve my kind of Excel skills because I'm really bad at that, like all the formulas and that kind of thing.
I'll get Henry to teach you. Henry's amazing at Excel.
Is he good?
I'm not. I'm really not.
Oh my God, it blows my mind. I like can't even understand so much of it. It's crazy.
I have some really smart people around me at work that are very good at Excel, and my new recent, or more recent job anyway, requires a lot of Excel stuff. So I've learned how to use Excel in a very basic way. So
It's not basic. It's pretty intense.
if you need any help, then yeah, hit me up.
So for the audience out there, I guess the message Gronya could be saying or suggesting is that even in this downtime of having to stay at home, then potentially there are definitely things that you can start working on. You can start learning things, you start reading books, listen to podcasts, learn about Excel, start working out at home. Anything else, Gronya?
One of the other things I thought of, is I haven't made a priority before this really was analyzing my matches that much, but now I have the opportunity to, so I've started watching some of them and, taking notes on the things that I can improve when I do get back on the badminton court. So that's another one. How about you guys? Do you guys have anything?
Well, I actually bought a corporate finance textbook not that long ago, and I've started to read that in my spare time. I don't know. I don't know
Sounds
how
so
interesting
dry.
that is. It's pretty dry for most people, but yeah, it's a bit of light reading, bit of
Some
learning.
light
It's
reading.
quite interesting because it's written like a story. So even though it's a textbook, so yeah, I'm actually quite enjoying it, even though I'm 8 pages in.
8.
I got to a question on page 8, and I was like, oh, I'll save that for another day.
Yeah. So, Gronya, are you the kind of person that just goes through books really quickly? So, if you're reading a book, for me personally, I would read it, but I can never read it really fast, especially a non-fiction book where there's actionable things to do, which is basically the only books that I read now anyway. But I always need to have time to like digest that chapter or figure out how I'm going to use it in my life or in business or my finances, etc., etc. Are you someone that just reads through and then kind of remembers things along the way, or do you stop and not want to miss anything along the way?
Yeah, if I really like a book and I'm really into it, I'll read it quite fast. And at the time, I'll be like, oh, that's so good. Like, oh, this book's awesome. Like, that's why I want to read it so fast, but I probably don't process that much of it. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh, it's such a good book, but I don't really remember anything from it. And then I'm like, oh, I should have highlighted it. I'll go back and highlight it. And then I was like, oh, I've just read it. I don't really want to read it all again. So that's my process.
So maybe you need to slow down to speed up
Yeah. Yeah.
and get the highlighter out the first time, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Like good quotes, that kind of thing. I like highlighting, especially because I read a lot of autobiographies and that kind of thing as well.
Mm, mm. Yeah. So what I've basically done, actually, just prior to recording this podcast, is I just literally went through my book list of all the books that I've got that I want to read, and I've got 100 books that I've read some of them, but I've got basically 100 books that I want to read at some time, and I'm definitely getting started on it at the moment. But with my slow reading process, where I'm the kind of person that reads and takes notes. So I'll read something and then think about it, and I'll take that note and I'll read it and I'll take notes. And it takes me a really long time to get through books. All right. Any other ideas that the audience can do in their time at home? I'm just gonna name some random things. Maybe you can go and get a recipe book, and if you do have access to those groceries, you can start developing your culinary skills.
I think it's good to appreciate the family time and also like make time to FaceTime the people that you can't be in contact with. I think this is something that also will continue more after COVID, after people realize how nice it is to kind of be in contact with all these people, even if the interstate, overseas, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I second that. I'd encourage those to reach out to people that you may have not reached out to or may have not spoken to for a long time, and just re-engage yourself with them, and yeah, just see what they're up to and just how life is. Because I think sometimes we forget, and we're moving so quickly that this COVID is a very bad thing, yes, but it's put a pause on everything so that we can reevaluate and reconnect with some of the people that we probably haven't been connecting with as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think just summing up here is just the notion that we've got to get used to being with ourselves again. We're usually so fast paced in what we're doing. We're running from this thing to that thing. We've got our mobile phone with us. We're connecting here and there, which is really important. But at the same time, it could just be an opportunity for us all to enjoy our own company, whether that be sitting down and reading a book or just doing some meditation or doing a workout, but that's by yourself, and that's being by yourself as well. There's so many different things, and it's just really about learning to enjoy your own company again, because I think if you can do that, then the perception of the situation is a lot better, rather than saying, oh, I'm isolated in home, this is hell, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. And just changing that perspective and saying, hey, look, this is a time for myself. I can be by myself. I can learn to be by myself again. I do have connection because we've got technology, which is awesome. And there's lots of other things I can learn along the way. So hoping everyone out there, if you're listening to this podcast, that it's not all doom and gloom. Yes, we want to make sure COVID gets better, but there are definitely things that we can work on a personal level that maybe we wouldn't have had time for if this never happened. So I think that's a really good spot just to wrap up this podcast. So for all the listeners out there, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. Hopefully we're going to get some more guests on that can also talk about their Olympic experience and what they feel about the change in the day of the Olympics. So of course, being about 1 year later, and just getting some insights as to how they're spending their time and making the best use of the time that they have at home.
If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with your family and friends and spread the love of badminton everywhere.
And if you want to connect with us, you can connect with us via our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and TikTok, via our social media handle, The Badminton Podcast, or Volantwear, VOLANTWEAR. Or you can find us on our website, www.volantwear.com. Make sure you reach out to us with any questions that you have, any requests on topics that you'd like to hear about, because we love hearing from you guys. Stay safe out there, and we will see you on the next episode.
Keep that hand rub going. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face, etc. 1.5 meters, etc., etc. Stay safe, guys. And Gronya, thanks again for being on the podcast.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.
Stay home.
Thanks, Gronya. See ya. Stay home. Bye. Bye.
This podcast was brought to you by Volantwear, the most versatile badminton apparel you'll ever own.